All right, here we go. It is Nebraska out of the bye week taking on Illinois at Memorial Stadium with a 2:30 kick. It's Nick Handley, Austin Oerman here with the Nick Handley Show, AM590, and our pregame coverage. And Austin, it's weird to say that, I mean, you could almost say mighty Illinois comes into town. Now, I get the record with Illinois and Nebraska the last couple of years, and just that alone, we could say, yeah, mighty Illinois. But this Illinois actually has more than just, having Nebraska's number over the last couple of years. This is a team that has rattled off 5 straight wins. If you go all the way back to their loss to Indiana, they look like a team that has kind of learned from their mistakes. It's a team that is well aware of their identity. They are comfortable in their own skin. They are a physical team. They don't care if you know what they're going to do. They are challenging you to stop that. And that is the objective for Nebraska this afternoon.
And I think it's that identity that makes Illinois so mighty. I think that's what it is. Because, yeah, they have some good dudes. They got a couple guys out of the transfer portal. But really, I think their strength and their confidence comes from exactly that, knowing what they do and believing in themselves, trusting in themselves to do what they're going to do better than what you're going to do. It reminds me a lot of even kind of peak Northwestern, I guess, where they make you beat yourself. They know what they're about. They know what you're about. And they trust themselves more than anything else. And having, some better talent recruited there by Bret Bielema, developed in the last couple of years, definitely helps. But Bret Bielema knows what he's about. He's been about it, basically since he started coaching college football. And you can see it in Illinois, just like you saw it in Wisconsin and even a little bit at Arkansas.
We spent a lot of time on this yesterday of Bret Bielema, and I don't want to make it sound like he took the job at Illinois solely based on what they had at the offensive line, what Lovie Smith and what his coaching staff was able to recruit and what he had at the offensive line that he was going to inherit. Now, I don't also think, though, that Bret Bielema was necessarily turned off by that either. I think Bret Bielema saw that and figured, hey, he understands what it takes to win in the Big Ten. He was able to do so at Wisconsin. There was always that conversation last year of Bret Bielema trying to sort of make Illinois like Wisconsin light. And that's probably almost, if you look at this year, kind of disrespectful towards Illinois because of what they have been able to establish. The interesting thing, though, going back to what you said about, recruiting and developing, is they've also done a nice job of sort of utilizing the transfer portal, but also developing some of those younger guys. So that veteran offensive line that he inherited a year ago, you had some younger guys that were learning underneath those guys. So when they left this year, or graduated last year, I should say, you had guys willing and able to step up and to really be relied upon of what Illinois wanted to do. And then you think of the offensive line, you think, okay, well, is it that good? Well, it's not a world-beating offensive line, but when you have an elite running back like Chase Brown and you have a solid, reliable offensive line, well, that offensive line is going to look better than what they maybe are. And Chase Brown, to some extent, is probably going to look better than what he truly is. And this is where Bret Bielema began the build at Illinois. And it's funny, we talked about it a lot yesterday about how when we think of, turnarounds or rebuilds or however you want to label it, you always think of, well, the quickest way to do that, because we used the Michigan State template a year ago. You get a bunch of skill position guys. You find, an elite running back like Michigan State was able to do, and you kind of go from there and you can get that quick turnaround. Where we're seeing in Illinois, no, it's a line of scrimmage. If you can build that and you can get the right guys in place, whether it's what you inherited or you add a couple of guys from the transfer portal or just good development in a matter of a year, it's amazing the things, especially in the Big Ten, that you can accomplish in year 2.
Absolutely. And that's what I think should give Nebraska fans a little bit of hope, is that with the right coach and the right group of players, it can take a year and a half or 2. I think Illinois and Michigan State are inverses of each other. Michigan State got the quick fix. I know it was year 2 under Mel Tucker, but it was a lot closer to year 1.
Yeah.
With the COVID year and everything going on with that. So he went to the transfer portal, got some dudes. I'm sure he coached them. I'm sure they learned stuff from him, but it felt more like kind of that grab bag. I'll grab you, I'll fit you in here, you go there, and maybe not you, but you're good depth, that sort of thing. Whereas what Bielema did was a little bit slower, not as much immediate gratification, but he liked the group he had behind those older guys on the offensive line. And on only 1 year, they're back to not missing a beat. You don't see a whole lot of drop off, and that's amplified Chase Brown. Then you go get a transfer quarterback in Tommy DeVito, who is wearing the same exact colors, essentially, but new school and a little further southwest. And boom, it just feels like what Illinois is doing with the coaching and the development is sustainable. And again, it's good for Nebraska too. That yeah, it might take 2 or 3 years for Nebraska, but it doesn't necessarily have to if the right guys are in place. It could be 6-6 to 9-3 in just 2 seasons. That shouldn't be out of the question.
I'm glad you brought up Tommy DeVito because he is probably one of the guys that maybe gets, I don't even want to say he gets lost in the shuffle because there's, I think, been more appreciation, especially as Illinois continues to win football games. There's more appreciation of what Tommy DeVito brings to the table. And I don't know why it took me till like Thursday or Friday of this week to kind of make the comparison, but maybe it's because I don't want to quite yet compare Illinois to 2021 Michigan, but I do see a lot of similarities in what Tommy DeVito is doing with this team and his role, like we saw with Cade McNamara a year ago with Michigan, where he's a game manager. You don't necessarily want to saddle him with that label because he can make plays. He's a guy that's smart with the football. The one thing that I really appreciated about Cade McNamara is he made very few mistakes and his completion percentage was very high. So that right there tells me you're a guy that is valuing the football. You're a guy that is making smart decisions. You're a guy that is highly accurate. And when there's a play that needs to be made, you do have the athleticism if you need to use your legs to make that play, or if there's a third down and predictable where teams are coming after you, you stay poised in the pocket and you make a good throw and you keep your offense on the field. Those are the things that Tommy DeVito is showing that he can do. And I think when you do have that type of recipe, a quarterback that understands, hey, the strength of this team is going to be what we do on the ground. And we've got some guys that we can utilize, but we also have some skill guys. So it is going to be up to me at some point to get these guys the football. I need to deliver that. That's pretty much what Tommy DeVito's done this year.
Absolutely, it has. And again, that's another guy that I think we can help credit, Brett Bielema and that staff with unlocking. I don't want to say developing because he did play 4 seasons at Syracuse, but this is by far his best season. I mean, in 2019, he put up some pretty good numbers at Syracuse. I mean, 63% completion, 19 touchdowns against 5 interceptions for about 2,400 yards. That's not bad, but that was a really bad Syracuse team. What Tommy DeVito is doing is because of Chase Brown, because of those guys on the outside, to some degree, they're elevating him, but he's doing his job. That's what we talk about with a lot of Big Ten West quarterbacks, kind of that game manager label, like you said. He can be a little bit more than that, but not much more. And he doesn't have to be much more than that, hardly at all, because he's doing his job. He's putting his team in spots where his limitations can't be exposed. And he would never admit that, obviously, but I think that's what Illinois' scheme is about, knowing that he's good. He's a solid quarterback. There's a reason he's starting for a team that's ranked 17th in the country right now. Not a world beater, not flying up NFL draft boards or anything based on this season, but he's become a solid, dependable, reliable college player doing his job. And again, it's that identity. What am I as a quarterback? What am I asked to do? Not more, not less. That's just what he does.
And this is what Nebraska's up against. And we talk about usually in these pre-games, we kind of get into where Nebraska is, where they were before we even get into the opponent. But I think it's important to kind of understand Illinois. It's not your grandfather's Illinois. It's not even your father's Illinois. I mean, this is an Illinois team that comes in to Lincoln off of a bye week as well, just like Nebraska, with a lot of confidence, a team that is well coached, a team that is led by a coach who knows how to navigate successfully through the Big Ten because he did so at Wisconsin. I mean, this is everything that Nebraska is up against. And having said all of that, it's a tremendous opportunity for Nebraska this afternoon for the simple fact that this is a ranked opponent. Illinois comes in ranked number 17. Nebraska has not beat a ranked opponent since 2016. I mean, everybody knows the drought there. And we look at not only this opportunity for Nebraska to come out and to sort of set the tone of this final 5-game stretch. It's going to be a very tough and physical 5-game stretch, but also a lot of eyeballs on Mickey Joseph. Okay, we saw the first bye week. That was one to sort of let everybody breathe for a moment. Let everybody sort of collect themselves after everything that took place. We were talking to Voice of the Huskers, Greg Sharp, earlier in the week, and he said, yeah, that's exactly what that first week was, for everyone to kind of let the world stop spinning so fast for a moment and just to kind of get their footing. This second bye week is a lot more normal of what you see in college football. These guys all understand now, have had enough time to, really connect to Mickey Joseph, now the head coach, not just the wide receiving coach and associate head coach. The defense has had a chance to understand, okay, what's going to be expected out of them from the Bill Busch-led defense. All of those things are, I think, good and I think beneficial in this bye week, because I think this is where you can really do some maybe interesting install of some things that if you want to introduce to Illinois that you don't feel like they've seen or you've shown, well, here you go. That's going to be interesting. We know that the defense, especially in that Purdue game, look, they got banged up. They got shredded there at the end too. It's a team, and we've talked about it. This is no news that this is a defense that has a lot of flaws, but we know that defense sometimes, if you are simplifying things and your effort is there, you can fake some things. And Nebraska, give Bill Busch, give this defense credit, they were able to do that against Indiana in Rutgers. Not fake, but they were able to believe enough in the effort where they were able to shut those teams out in the second half. Purdue brought them back down to reality. Purdue, again, exposed Nebraska where the weaknesses truly are. Those weaknesses do start with stopping the run, something Nebraska did so good a year ago and really for a handful of years under Eric Chinander. They will have that responsibility today to not stop or shut down the Russian attack. And I've heard some people say, you got to shut down Chase Brown. You're not going to do that. Can you limit it though? Because if you can limit it, if you have a chance to win this football game and you want to win this game, obviously Nebraska does, you have got to limit, as we talked about a lot this week, be able to make Chase Brown really work for what he is trying to do. And then when it comes to the offense, this is a decent Illinois defense as well. They are in the top 5 in several categories, including stopping the run. They are the best statistically in college football when it comes to that. So what can this offense generate? Can they try to stay confident in what they're trying to do? Can they throw Illinois? We talked a lot about some pre-snap motion looks, just different things to keep Illinois honest defensively. All of those things to try to keep Nebraska competitive in this game. And you hope in the fourth quarter right there, especially in the last 6 minutes, that you are within striking distance. And then at that point, hey, it's college football and you just never know.
That it is. I don't think Nebraska is going to be able to duplicate what it did against Kenneth Walker last year. 19 carries for 61 yards. If you're able to hold Chase Brown to that, incredible. Job well done. Mm-hmm. And I would like to think Nebraska wins that game. If, he's limited to 20 carries and he only gets, 61 yards. But the odds of that happening is not something I'm willing to put even, the change in my pocket here on. I just don't believe in it. But yeah, that's a fine line Nebraska has to walk too, because keep it simple seemed to work against Indiana and Rutgers. Get lined up, and that makes sense. If you can put in the work, in the film room to understand alignments, to understand formations and what motion you do and don't have to keep your eyes on, that goes a long way. Something as simple as being lined up. But at the same time, we've seen simple get shredded for, 5 out of the 7 games, essentially. If Nebraska is not able to, throw some sprinkles in with the vanilla, that tells me everything I need to know about, in some degrees, both the coaching staff and the players. If they're not able to use a bye week to put in some of those wrinkles and show Illinois something in really a make or break part of the season. I mean, Nebraska looks like it's close to, falling to another 3-9, 4-8 season. But if you're able to put something else on film, by installing it in a bye week and using it to good effect, I'm not saying Nebraska is going to win, but it gives me more confidence in, if it is Mickey Joseph as the head coach, as if, Bill Busch stays around, or on the defensive side of the ball for some of these transfers coming back for a second year, these younger guys taking that next step, because 2 weeks should be more than enough time to add something new, even if you want to keep it simple. If you're not able to do that, that would really concern me.
The injury front, we knew it going into really coming out of the Purdue week, going into the bye week, that it was going to be highly unlikely that we would see Nick Handley the rest of the year. And that is the case. That was confirmed by Mickey Joseph earlier. I want to get your thoughts on that impact and really what you see there. And then also, it's not maybe as big of a deal because he's not the lead running back, but Gabe Ervin for the second straight game, I should say, will miss because of dealing with a turf toe type injury. So you look at who maybe is going to be the best candidate to spell Anthony Grant when needed. That, I think, is an interesting conversation too. But I want to go back to the linebacking play because of the objective of this Nebraska defensive attack and trying to slow down the rushing attack, trying to get off the field on third downs. In your opinion, Nick Henrich injury means what?
It means a lot. I think that Ernest Hausmann has good physical ability, but he's also not fully developed yet. I think he'll get there. I don't know if this is a great game for him. Chris Kolarvik, there's a reason he was moved to nickel because they liked him better a little bit there. I know he started at linebacker, but there's a reason they tried him someplace else besides inside linebacker. And Von Maga Clemens was a pretty big, transfer portal pickup. It's just kind of been there. Nick Henrich is a guy we've seen make plays. He's been consistent. He's been reliable, and he's an upperclassman. Voted a captain. His teammates clearly respect him. And he's good at what he does. That's what that tells me. His absence is huge because I just can't talk myself into, the other three linebackers aside from Luke Reimer having a Nick Henrich-like impact. Mm-hmm. Maybe, they bring something new to the table. Maybe there is more, turnover-making ability because we haven't seen a lot of that from Nick Henrich, but we also haven't seen it from, I can't even say the young guys because Ernest Hausmann's really the only young guy in that group. Kolarvik and Maga Clemens are upperclassmen. We know what they are right now. And we know that they're not Nick Henrich. They're not as good as he is. So the injury to me means there's a lot more on Luke Reimer's plate. It also makes it that much more important for Miles Farmer to tackle. I'm led to believe there are going to be some second or third level opportunities for the Illinois running backs to break some tackles. Miles Farmer's got to have a good game and run support, but also at the same time, not get burned deep. Don't get so sucked up in the run that you get beat over the top play action. Illinois will do that. We've seen that with all these, running heavy teams that they want you to creep up, bring that safety up. And that to me is why outside of Luke Reimer having a big game, Miles Farmer might be the second most important, non-defensive line run defender today.
That's a good observation. I didn't even really factor in. I mean, we know it goes without saying when Nebraska has an opportunity to make a tackle, they've got to. That hasn't always been the strength of this team too. But when you think of the secondary, yes, Miles Farmer, I think you even look at Malcolm Hartzog, a young player that's kind of, injected some life into this defense too as a true freshman and has, been a guy that's been sort of a ball hawk. But yet again, you have to stress the ability to tackle when you have that opportunity and trying to help out and run support. All these guys are going to be tasked with that. All these guys also understand that it's not just Chase Brown, but we've mentioned there's some receivers like an Isaiah Williams, Hightower. There's some good players there too that they can get the football to in the passing game. But, I thought it was brought up by Garrett Nelson earlier too, stressing the importance of them being disciplined. And I get so sucked into the interior of the defense when it comes to this type of Illinois offensive attack. But what I've also realized, and where I think Garrett Nelson is spot on too, when you watch some of the bigger runs from Chase Brown and some of the bigger plays from Chase Brown, he can shoot to a gap, and if there's just a little bit of a crease, he's gone. He's got that secondary speed that's just, it's unique, but he also has that vision to cut back when something does get clogged up on one side. He's able to find that cutback lane, and at that point you got maybe a weak side linebacker or outside linebacker that's over pursuing, not staying true to his lane, not staying disciplined to his area, and all of a sudden he's sucked into that big pile, and all of a sudden there is a wide open other side of the field, and Chase Brown is there in no time, and it's another big play. So these guys, not even necessarily being able to, live in the backfield. And you hope that there is that ability to do so. And I think it's more important to what they try to do to Tommy DeVito in passing situations. But the weak side linebacker being disciplined, not getting sucked away with the play. So that cutback lane is essentially eliminated. Or when they do try, when Chase Brown or any other running back tries to attack that cutback, you're there to make the play, and you do make the play. You do blow that thing up, you stay disciplined, and you finish the play. That is going to be huge.
Garrett Nelson and Caleb Tanner especially have seen enough of this. I would hope they're disciplined. If they're not, they can't be on the field, plain and simple, because they've seen enough of this style of running game that if those guys are over pursuing and then missing those backside tackles, that's a problem. I'm curious to see Illinois' game plan against Ojan Mathis. Not a guy that's really been game planned for because he hasn't done a whole lot. But coming from the Big 12, hasn't seen a lot of what Illinois wants to do. So are they going to run at him when he's on the field with his reputation as a pass rusher, not necessarily a run stopper, or do they run away from him and test his discipline? Because that's a guy that I think we all want to see make some of those splash plays. You crash in from the weak side, use your athletic gifts, and get that tackle for loss by dragging the back down from behind. But if he gets too far sucked in, is Illinois able to make him pay for having undisciplined eyes, for not staying in his gap, just because that's a guy that hasn't seen a lot of this?
Offensively, and I want to go back to that injury to Gabe Ervin, not available today. That, I mean, again, on itself is not huge for the fact that he's been limited throughout the year. He hasn't been a major factor into the running back rotation. Now, once you did sort of reshuffle things after you had the injury, why am I totally blanking on his name now? My gosh.
AJ Allen.
Thank you, AJ Allen, who is amazing. Gosh, I can't even believe it. That tells you how the season's gone. AJ Allen, I mean, you had a tremendous 1-2 punch between Allen and Anthony Grant. AJ Allen goes down, and all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, that opens the door for Gabe Ervin. Saw him a little bit. Now, a lot of that was in sort of closing time against Oklahoma, where he put up 60+ yards, but I don't know if he truly was a major factor, or where this coaching staff felt like we could just slide him right into that spot that AJ Allen occupied and we're going to be just fine. So you did see maybe more Jock Yan. We saw one carry. It was a draw. It was a successful one with Ramir Johnson. More time to prepare. That Nebraska, this is the interesting thing about their offensive mindset. They throw the football well. That's how they get things done. They've got Trey Palmer. I mean, ask Purdue how Nebraska gets points. And, Trey Palmer is a handful. Does Illinois have the opportunity to do something that Purdue didn't against Trey Palmer? Sure, they do. But that's got to also be a benefit to guys like Marcus Washington, Oliver Martin, Travis Vokalek. So it goes without saying, the passing game is going to be on the radar for Illinois. But the only way that that's effective is by having at least some success. I don't want to make it sound like it's got to be, to the tune of 200+ yards, but it's having some success in running the football. And Anthony Grant is going to be a marked man. He has been pretty much all season. And we're waiting for him to kind of have another one of those, real breakout games or bust off one of those long runs. It's been tough sledding. We know this offensive line is limited with, but can there be a complementary force in the backfield, of whether it would be a Jock Yan or it is a Ramir Johnson or it's both of those guys, and they're using them in creative ways? And this goes back to what we were talking about on Friday, maybe a little bit more of the pre-snap motion as what Brett Bielema likes to do himself, a little bit of that window dressing to where you've got linebackers' eyes moving back and forth. You've got some feet that are having to stay honest, and then you can really attack a certain area that you feel is going to be favorable. That, to me, is going to be interesting to watch, especially early on how Nebraska, not necessarily how often they want to run the football, but how do they want to go about running the football?
Absolutely, because we've seen a Mark Whipple offense for 7 games now, and sure, he'll run it from time to time, but really the only drive that I can remember Nebraska's having that commitment to running the football was the salt the game away drive against Indiana. Yep. 12 plays, 6 minutes, basically all runs until the end when you flip it over the top to Chancellor Brewington for the touchdown. Gabe Ervin as running back too, I'm not sure. I was very excited on him. I thought he was going to be the lead guy coming into the year, coming off that injury. Slowed back with, the rehab. Wasn't necessarily full in fall camp. There's some maintenance work being done on it. That should have been a sign, I think, as to where he was. And, that's okay. It takes some guys longer than others to get back physically healthy, but he still is making a lot of the same, reads and plays that he did as a freshman, which to some degree is understandable because his freshman year was cut short, but you would have liked to seen some growth, some more explosiveness. We just haven't seen a lot of that from Gabe Ervin yet. Now that he's been on the field a lot, but if we would have heard about it in practice, I'd like to think it would pop against someone other than just Oklahoma's backup. So that's where I think it is more of a Jock Yan, Ramir Johnson show. And I think that's good for Nebraska, where you can, use Jock Yan with some power, but he's also shown a little bit of speed against, a bad Northwestern defense last year, but at least he's got it in him. And Ramir, definitely that speed element. And again, kind of a changeup out of the backfield where you haven't shown a lot of, swing passes, which to some degree, thank goodness for that, given how poorly we've seen them go. But Ramir does give you that other element. You can go, 5 wide and get Ramir matched up on a linebacker when you motion him out of the backfield. There are ways to use pretty much all of those guys, but I do think it will come based off of a pass to set up the run.
Yeah.
My guess is Illinois comes out, trusts their guys to cover Trey Palmer one-on-one. If that's the case, Nebraska's gotta hit a shot to Trey Palmer early. Make him a focal point early so Illinois devotes a second guy to him.
Yeah.
That they get out of maybe their comfort zone and what they want to do defensively just to slow down that Thompson to Palmer connection. At that point, when you have a better numbers advantage, you can start running the ball a little bit more because that's what this offensive line needs right now. If it's, evenly matched in terms of, 5 offensive linemen on 5 defenders, or even, 5 and a tight end on 6 or 7 guys, Nebraska's offensive line and running backs just aren't good enough right now to work at a numbers disadvantage. You have to find some way to make that math work out in your favor. And when you do, take full advantage. That's when you run the ball.
Yeah. And, this kind of comes back on Casey as well. Look, he's had enough games to understand here's what his offensive line can and can't do. And he's just going to have to be on time, and he's going to have to be early with it. I mean, I feel like if you're even waiting that extra second, hoping that separation is going to be there with either Trey Palmer or someone else, that second, that extra second that you might take in allowing something to develop, this is where I think you're going to have someone at your feet. You're going to have maybe poor mechanics because you are kind of fading back, and that's where footballs tend to get picked off. It's going to be a matter of Casey using all the experience, all the knowledge and ability that he has against a defense that, again, it's not a world-beating defense, but it's very sound. It's very physical. They've got 23 sacks on the season, so they're averaging a little more than 3 sacks per game. So they're going to be harassing him in the backfield. So how do you protect Casey? He has to also help protect himself. He has to be able to get rid of it early and often, but he's got to be there with the football. He has got to be accurate with the football. And so I'm curious to see what they will also do from a protection standpoint. Are you leaving a running back in there every now and then to chip? Also, we've talked about him this week. Another guy that his name continues to be brought up as we get a little closer and closer to this one, and that's Tommy Hill. Can he be an X-factor playmaker in this offense, and how will they go about trying to introduce him into the offense?
Tommy Hill might be the wrinkle for the Nebraska offense. Yep. I hope that's not just what it is, but that's a guy with no film out there since high school. You don't know what Nebraska wants to do with him. We don't know what Nebraska wants to do with them. I would hope that after, about a month now, give or take, and, now a second bye week to work on this, that he's ready to go. Not that Nebraska has necessarily a lack of weapons at wide receiver, but if he's a guy that you can get the ball to quickly, just a little one-step deke, get him over the middle in an advantageous situation on the move, that's an element we haven't seen out of Nebraska yet. The big plays have all been down the field, not really, self-created yards after the catch style. When it comes to Casey, it's almost a first read. If it's not there, you're either taking off or you're throwing it away. Because Illinois, I am afraid, is going to be at his feet, is going to be dipping at his heels basically all afternoon long. If your first read isn't there, you have to be on to plan B that much quicker in a game like this, where they're going to be physical. It's going to be harder to go through your progressions because my guess is Nebraska is going to have its timing thrown off on some of these routes. They haven't seen, coverage like what Illinois has done so far. So if that first read isn't there, be prepared, to look to the sideline, to be ready to just get rid of it, throw it away, live to play another down rather than take a sack. Or, depending on where the pressure is coming from, can you get out of the pocket, maybe scramble sometimes, but also maybe just move parallel with that line of scrimmage, get a guy to commit to you and flip it over top. That's where I think Casey's savvy could be huge in a game like this.
I love to make comparisons to Nebraska and my beloved Chicago Bears.
You do.
The one thing I loved and so they had sort of a mini bye week because they played, a couple of Thursdays ago, and then they don't play till Monday night. So you have a little bit of a mini bye week. And what I really appreciated that Matt Eberflus and, really to a larger portion, Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, were able to do with Justin Fields is understand, hey, you know what? We're going to embrace what we can do offensively. We're not going to try to force what we can't do. We're going to embrace what we can do. We know our offensive line is completely banged up. We know that Justin Fields is an athlete. We know that we can, so that, and I'm not trying to say they're going to design runs for Casey Thompson, I'm not trying to compare it that way, but they identified a strength of their offense, be that as it may, as far as not a lot, but they identified a strength and they tried to really lean on that against a very disciplined New England Patriot defense. And what did you see in that game? You saw them allowing Justin Fields to be an athlete, and it had some design runs for him, but they also made sure they were getting him in situations where he's getting rid of the ball fast, where they're getting a couple quick drops. They're getting guys maybe in 5-yard patterns, patterns near the line of scrimmage, and allowing guys to make plays in space. And the reason I bring that up is it's being able to identify at this point of the season, which I think Nebraska's had time to do, identifying what you are, what you can be, and most importantly, what you aren't, and not trying to force that. Look, there are certain things that you're going to have to do that are going to probably take you out of your comfort zone just to show, but the identity at the end of this afternoon's game has to be more about what Nebraska is, what they can be with this offense, things that are not going to completely take them out of their comfort zone for the majority of the game. You're not going to put Casey in situations that he's just not built to, stand in on. You're not going to put this offensive line in a position to where they just, cannot handle certain blocking schemes because that is not their strength. You have to play to your strengths. And I know it sounds crazy, but there are some strengths with this offense, and that has to be what Nebraska's game plan is all about.
You don't shore up your weaknesses in games. You shore those up in practice. And that's what I think these couple weeks have been about to some degree, but you can only fix so much of that weakness. So if you know what you are and know what you're about, double down on your strength. Go all in on it. I still think Nebraska is more athletic outside than anything Illinois has seen so far. I think Casey Thompson is the best quarterback Illinois has seen, at least since Connor Baselak in Indiana, if not, all season. I think he has that potential. Put the ball in his hands. You went out and you got him for a reason because you trust him to make those good decisions. Still try to involve Trey Palmer. You went out and got him for a reason. You've seen he can darn near win you a game single-handedly. Trust Anthony Grant, number one JUCO back in the country. Give him a chance to break a play. It might not be the way that you want it to be. It might not be with that, smash mouth physical identity right now. You can build to that in practice. Again, over the offseason, more likely than this season. But put your guys in position to succeed. You see them more than anyone else. You should know what they can do well, what they struggle a little bit more with, and where you can attack Illinois' defense. If you stray from that, trying to get too cute, trying to, prove something to people that, oh yeah, we can be physical too, watch this, you're more than likely Nebraska's going to fall flat on its face.
We talked about a couple things as we wrap things up here this week that, could obviously benefit Nebraska greatly. I mentioned time of possession. Nebraska can't get gutted in that stat. They've got to either be even or I think slightly favored with time of possession, because then you're taking away what Illinois wants to do. They want to control the clock in this game. If you can keep them from doing so, that tells me two things. You're able to have your own success offensively and stay on the field, but also you're getting them off the field on third downs. That is going to be vital. And then that takes me to my other one that I talked about a lot too, the third down conversion rate for Illinois. It's got to be less than 50% if Nebraska's to have a chance in this football game. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, and I think you have to force a lot of third downs from Illinois as well, because this is a team that at times can be predictable, where they'll go run on first down, run on second down. If you're able to stop those two runs and put Illinois in third and longs, I know that hasn't been great for the Nebraska defense, but I still like the defense's chances better in third and long than I do anything, even third and 5 and in. I think DeVito's good enough. I think Bielema and the offensive staff are good enough. Chase Brown's good enough that if you let Illinois be multiple, that's a problem. And that's what they are right now. Yeah, it's based on the running attack. That's where it all starts. But they hit you with those shots deep when they're able to. So that's where you have to commit to taking something away from Illinois and make them as one-dimensional as possible. If that takes, bringing 9 guys down on first and second downs to stop the run sometimes, do it. Dare Illinois to beat you. Trust Quentin Newsome and Malcolm Hartzog to make some plays. But if Illinois starts hitting those shots and they're able to run the ball, that's an issue.
Yeah. Chase Brown out of the backfield as a receiver. They've used him. They've gone there, and it's worked out too. This game, Austin, I know we've talked about it all throughout the week. Having said everything we just said there for almost 30 minutes, I'm not in love with this matchup for Nebraska. It's a great opportunity. They're coming off a bye week, and I think I trust this coaching staff to do everything they possibly can to put Nebraska in a good situation and have a good game plan for this Illinois team. It just to me comes down to strength on strengths, weakness on weaknesses, and I just think Illinois has too much strength against Nebraska's weaknesses here. I took a Illinois a cover, by the way, 7 points favor in Illinois. I did take Illinois to cover. I got 31-17. I could see this thing going one of two ways, where Nebraska's trying to get that final stop so they can try to get the ball back and try to tie it up at 17-24, and then Illinois is able to get in the end zone, or you're looking at a 31, say 10 football game, and Nebraska gets a touchdown there towards the end to make it a little more respectable. But yeah, in some way I got a 31-17 Illinois victory.
I predicted 33-28 yesterday. Slept on it a little bit, chewed on it last night. And nothing changed. I still think it's Illinois. I think Nebraska can keep it respectable. I think this crowd, it's been darn near a month since Nebraska's played at Memorial Stadium. Yeah. We talked about the crowd all week. I think they'll be excited. How long is Nebraska able to keep that crowd engaged and a part of the game? We'll see. I think this is a game that, Illinois kind of puts its foot down late third, early fourth, gets up a couple possessions. Nebraska scores late to make it more respectable.
Gorgeous day for football. So hopefully the crowd's already they're going to be amped, as you mentioned, being away for so long, but also with just tremendous Halloween weekend weather. You've got a ranked opponent in town. It's a fun time to be at Memorial Stadium. So we will see if the crowd can stay engaged for 4 quarters, because if they are, well, that could be good. That could be a factor that I know we discussed a little bit throughout the week, could be a factor because Illinois, having not played in that type of environment. Yeah, they won in Wisconsin. They won in Brett Bielema's homecoming to Madison, which obviously was emotional, but you add about 20,000 more fans to the equation. And if they've got something to get amped about, then that could also have some type of impact. What we hope that's the case, but we will have all the reaction on Monday. Our Big Red Breakdown brought to you by Penn Station Subs. That'll get underway at noon on AM590. Today's pregame coverage starts at 10:30 a.m. Kickoff 2:30 on AM590 ESPN Omaha and the AM590 Omaha app. He's Austin Oerman. I'm Nick Handley. Appreciate you checking out our Huskers pregame coverage as Nebraska takes on Illinois. Enjoy the game.